Earlier this year, one of the biggest hype trains finally hit the station in the form of Zack Snyder's Justice League. This honestly could be argued as the biggest event of the decade, and we've only just started the 2020s. With an extra 2 hours, increased amazing special effects, and much less CGI top lip, fans were pile-driven into their seats, ready to make a subscription to HBO Max to get their peepers on what was a very good movie. Let's not dance around it. It wasn't exactly a movie of the year, but it was leagues better than its Whedon counterpart. One of the changes that made it easier on the audience was the revamped Flash played by Ezra Miller. Outside of cutting out that dumb brunch rant, we got a more competent Barry Allen with incredible speed feats to boot. So let's not drag this intro any longer and get to answering the question, how fast is Snyder-Cut Flash? As we do with our strength videos, we need to find a starting feat before we jump into the deep ends with the speedster's insane velocity. And we're better to get such a feat than Barry's first interaction with Batman. After a brief conversation in which Bruce tries to coax Barry into spilling out what his powers are,
silica-based sand quartz fabric. Abrasion resistant, heat resistant.
Yeah, I do competitive ice dancing.
It's what they use on the space shuttle to prevent it from burning up on re-entry.
I do very competitive ice dancing.
he throws a batarang at Barry. In response, Barry enters flash time, where everything slows down, allowing him to easily duck aside from the projectile's trajectory. Barry moves about 2 feet in roughly a second, making him move at, well, 2 feet a second, but that's excluding the multiplier of how he perceives time. Assuming Batman was throwing the batarang as fast as world-class knife throwers, around 35 miles per hour, we can use the distance between the two of 6 feet to determine how long it would have taken in real time to reach Barry. While we see the batarang take about 9.5 seconds to move 6 feet, it really should have only taken 0.116879 seconds, meaning that everything is 81.28 times slower in flash time. With this multiplier, we find that Barry was casually moving at 49.5 meters per second, roughly 111 miles per hour, which is roughly twice as fast as the speed cars are moving on the highway. After the League saves a group of civilians, Wonder Woman clashes with Steppenwolf before the platform beneath them breaks, causing both Wendy and her sword to fall. Barry rushes in, laps around the edge of the tunnel, before tapping down his sword back up into her grasp. The Flash performs 3 laps before a 4th one, albeit slower than the first, so we the audience can see Barry moving. In this shot, we can use the Nightcrawler as a reference to determine the diameter of this tube. Seeing as the width is roughly 2.5 times the crawler's length, a measurement of 14 meters, we find that the diameter to be roughly 31 meters. But Barry isn't running the diameter, he's actually running around the edge, aka the circumference. To determine this length, we can use this equation, which is circumference equals 2 pi r. Switching the two radiuses out for the diameter, since that's what diameter is, we find the circumference to be 97.38 meters. Multiplying that by 3 for each lap and dividing it by the 5-second time frame in which he did it, we find his speed to be 58.43 meters per second. But once again, we have to find out how much slower everything around Barry is before concluding on his speed. In this shot, just before Barry pokes at the God-Killer blade, it falls about a foot and does so in roughly 4 seconds. But how long would it take to fall in real time? Well, using this formula to determine how far an object would fall, d equals 1/2 gravity times time squared, we rearrange it to read t, meaning time, equals the square root of 2 times the distance divided by gravity. Using the estimated 0.3333333333333, using the estimated 1/3 meter distance and Earth's gravity of 9.81 meters per second, we find that it should have only taken 0.2606873 seconds. Using flash time compared to real time, we find a multiplier of 15.34, thus making Barry's speed in this scene around 900 meters per second, over 2.5 times the speed of sound. Near the climax of the movie, the team is planning out their plan in which Cyborg needs Barry to build a charge in order to aid in splitting the Mother Box unity. Based on this shot, and assuming it's a 1-to-1 scale, we can use this cooling tower to determine the radius of Barry's track. Towers like these can stand as tall as 660 feet, aka 201.17 meters. Through that, we can determine the radius to be a little over 700 meters. To find his top speed in the scene, let's use the last few laps he performs, where he completes 1 lap in 13/30ths of a second. Using the formula for circular velocity, v equals 2 pi r over t, where v is velocity, r is the radius, and t is the time. Since we collected the radius and time already, let's hurl them into this equation and find a speed of 10,243 meters per second, roughly Mach 30. For reference, most ballistic missiles, also called ICBMs, travel at 7,000 meters per second, making the Flash's speed in this scene 3,000 meters per second faster. Now, if you've seen this movie, you know that things go awry where the Mother Box Unity comes together where a massive terraforming blast erupts. Due to this, Barry breaks his rule of not going past the speed of light in the face of death, and instead goes
Far beyond the speed of light. Gotta break the rule, Barry.
Now, this is incredibly vague, and the method I'm about to use to try to determine Barry's top speed could be off by however wide a margin. But it'd be anticlimactic to just leave things off at only the speed of light, roughly 299,800,000 meters per second. So, the blast travels about 3/4 of the previously determined radius in about 4 seconds, giving it a detonation speed of 132.459 meters per second. In the time where Barry enters flash time, the blast now travels barely a meter, something which happens in 30 seconds for Barry, but what would have only taken 0.00755 seconds to go off, going off the aforementioned detonation speed. With this in mind, we find that Barry's perceiving things roughly 3,974 times faster than they're happening. Assuming that he then reaches the speed of light within this flash time, his statement of far beyond the speed of light would make his top speed exactly that, 3,974 times the speed of light, a velocity of 1,191,405 meters per second. Again, I'm sure there are other ways to determine the upper limits of the Flash's speed, but this is what I concluded on today. Until next time, I hope you enjoyed your stay here at Honor's Place. Feel free to like and subscribe for more. You can find the playlist for the season of How Strong Is here, or my previous episode of Scoring the Fight. And yeah. Bye-bye.